So I thought, well, rather than give a brief pre-say about it, how about actually asking someone who knows pretty much everything bar possibly how to construct one from scratch. Welcome to my guest.
Hi, my name is Justin. I just very briefly provide background. I have an MA in military history, specifically intelligence history, but the main marching grounds are the Asia-Pacific War and war period, focusing predominantly on Japan. I'm sure some of you are familiar with me. I've commented on a couple of other YouTube channels, but yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome, thank you very much. And again, thank you very much for coming. So obviously, particularly recently, the A6M has appeared on screen in a movie about one of the largest in the Pacific War, which we shall not talk about too much to avoid the rage. But nevertheless, in this video, this is mainly going to be just telling us information, and I'll check any occasions of observations or further questions. So let's get on with that. So the first question, so to put things in a bit of context, what aircraft did the A6M actually take over from, and when was the A6M designed? Like, what aircraft is it contemporary with? This sort of often causes a bit of confusion when it's compared to other aircraft like the Wildcat, Hellcat, or the Bullfire, etc.
Well, so the aircraft it took over from was helpfully named A5M. Type 96 carrier fighter is the famous name. And that was the immediate predecessor to Zero. The prototype first flew in January 1935, and then started to pull out units in early 1937. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the A5M video, but in short, it performed very well in combat. It can certainly be counted among the finest fighters in the world at that time. It was also the first model plane carrier fighter to enter service in the United States. It could reasonably be argued that the A5M and its bomber counterpart, the G3M, marked a more important phase in the development of Japanese military aircraft than their more famous successors, Zero and then the G4M, because they both represented the culmination of years of effort in Japan to develop indigenous aircraft designs that were competitive with the other leading powers, and with the A5M and the G3M, they finally accomplished that, at least on the Navy side. One random little bit of information is that the first Japanese fighters engaged by the U.S. Navy's for a Wildcat in February 1942 were not Zeros, unlike that movie. But A5Ms. It may be bizarre to some American viewers, the Central Pacific, the area closest to the U.S. and Pearl Harbor Peninsula, was usually a low priority area for the Japanese Navy in this early phase of the war. What you could call, I guess, the main show for the Japanese Navy was occurring in Southeast Asia, hence why these older aircraft, in that case, a modest number of A5Ms and G3Ms, made up the Japanese offensive air power in the region.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess moving on to the Zero specifically, the preliminary specifications were submitted to Mitsubishi and Nakajima on the 19th of May 1937. Thinking back to the A5M, that's pretty much right at the time that the A5M was just entering service, so they were already thinking about the next gen. The specifications were then revised a bit in October 1937 based on combat experience in China. We'll get to specific design requirements. Anyway, so Nakajima took one look at them, and they pulled out of competition, but Mitsubishi decided to push ahead with the design. The prototype's first flight was April 1st, 1939, and then it was re-engined to the engine of intervention production model, the Nakajima Sunday 12, and the first prototype powered by that engine on 28th December 1939. I'll take a little side note for a second here. I have to mention the Zero was exclusively by the Japanese Navy air service. The Japanese had two different air services. They had air service and their own air service, subordinated to their respective air services. You'll occasionally see folks claim otherwise. You talk about the that's correct. Combat trials started on July 21st, 1940, and then faced 15 I-15 BIS and 9 I-16 fighters of the Chinese Air Force. 4 Zeros were damaged in exchange for 13 aircraft destroyed and 11 damaged on the Chinese side. You'll often see books state that 27 aircraft were shot down. Those were Japanese planes, not confirmed kills. To go off on a slight tangent, theme, but thing is, honestly, it's one of the most fundamental things you have to understand when you're looking at air power, is that everybody overclaimed is significant. And I do mean everybody. Never take kill claims at face value. If it's the only figure you have, then you have to make sure that you're safe claim. Just as one example, during the air campaign, Giddy allies, so that's Royal Australian Air Force, bomber gunners, and AA gun crews. They claimed over 400 Tainan Kokutai Zeros over the span of this campaign. In reality, 44 Tainan pilots were killed when their planes were shot down or crashed during the campaign. So of those 44, 12 were lost to operational causes or weather. So when you do the math, that's a claim to kill ratio of 12.5 to 1. I assure you the Tainan Kokutai wish they had over 400 Zeros for the allies to shoot down. Over the course of the New Guinea campaign, the Tainan Kokutai took part in, both sides had a claim to kill ratio of roughly 7 to 1. And I'll read a really short excerpt on this, actually, in an excellent unit history of the Tainan Kokutai.
Sure.
So, quote, the most contentious issue to arise from a detailed study of this account is overclaiming. With so much invested by so many in the prestige of the tally of kills, the reality is set to disappoint. A cold analysis of overall claims reveals that both sides overclaimed by a ratio of around 7 to 1, i.e. for every 7 claims, only 1 was a kill. This conclusion unfortunately challenges the very platforms upon which many prestigious reputations have been built over the past 7 decades. However, the evidence is irrefutable. There are many reasons behind this state of affairs, most of them honorable. Combat was usually fleeting, witness cases of some Rico or Japanese bomber crews that were unaware that they had even been attacked. Whilst longer combats such as occurred in chases did occur, the norm was a very short encounter with a few hundred rounds fired. And then just skip a little bit over some detail here. In such a dangerous setting with complex and speedy movements, it is easy to see how several different pilots could claim against the same aircraft. We see many instances where Allied pilots are positive of a kill only for the record to confirm that their alleged victim happily cruised back to Leh or Rabaul unscathed. Optimism will win over reality in any treacherous environment, and New Guinea's wartime skies were no exception, end quote. And that's, again, just one example. It happened everywhere. I could talk about this for 30 minutes, just explaining the million different ways that overclaiming occurred, but we're not going to do that.
Fair enough. Though. I mean, it kind of actually reminds me of the shoot down of Admiral Yamamoto, where for a while after the P-38s came back, they were absolutely adamant that they'd shot down 3 bombers, despite the fact that the aerial convoy only had 2.
Yeah, and that kind of thing is widespread. Just as one random example specific to the Pacific War, in fact, specific to the Zero of the A6M2, when they engaged overboost, which is what you'd call, I guess, wartime emergency power WEP, it would leave a smoke trail, very visible smoke trail. Of course, if you're an American pilot, you're flying around at several hundred kilometers an hour, you're trying not to be killed, your adrenaline's going like crazy, Zero flashes in front of your gun sights for a second, you shoot, you see smoke, and then you never see that Zero again. Then you make a kill claim. But in reality, all that happened is he flew in front of you, you shot, he engaged his overboost, and smoke came out of the engine, and then he flew off somewhere. And that's just one of a billion different ways that overclaiming happens. And it's not them lying, it's just that's the reality of aerial combat.
Yeah.
So I guess to put the Zero into its context, so talking about contemporaries, and this isn't an exact science. I tried to stick to aircraft that were actually either entering combat or had been in combat and were still kind of forming the front line at that point in time. So we're not getting into wacky prototypes and all of that stuff that, or for example, I've omitted from December 1941, I omitted the Typhoon because the Typhoon was a raging dumpster fire for the first year of its entry to service.
That's being generous.
Yeah. But here we go. So for July 1940, so again, this is when the Zero first entered combat, or the combat zone.
Mhm.
For Germany, the Bf-109E4 was the newest aircraft, but it was the air fleet was still mostly made up of E1s and E3s, so older variants. For the UK, it's the Hurricane Mark 1 with the Hurricane Mark 2 shortly turning up, and then this similar story for the Spitfire Mark 1, and then a little later Mark 2. US, the F4, F3, kinda, it's actually a few months newer than the Zero. Then the Buffalo's hanging around. P40, I didn't even bother trying to sort out P40 variants. I was gonna do it, and then I'm like, I just not, it's not happening.
No.
But various variants of the P40. So if we fast forward to December 1941, which of course is a pretty significant date, Germany at that point has the Bf-109 F4. The Fokker Wolves are starting to creep into service, so you're at the about the Fokker Wolf 190 A2 A3. The UK, they're still rocking some Hurricane Mark 2s, but also Spitfire Mark 5s. The US F4